Just a few thoughts about what I did yesterday because this local lady advertises stuff online. All of the things she used to be involved in prior to losing her faith as a Wiccan. So it's all the Silver Ravenwolf books and all that stuff, and some of the things that I picked up off her I've now thrown away because it was a bit mouldy and a bit gank and all that. It was, but there's a few things I've kept because I like them. But what's really going on there? What was the experience for me personally? It's like I had bought the relics of somebody else's adolescence, spiritual adolescence. I mean, initially I thought, great, I've got a few more tarot packs, that's nice, But then I also felt to myself, this was a reflection of where she was at that time in her life. This was a reflection of her, as it were, spiritual evolution or theological evolution, or developing in terms of what she was as a person. And all of a sudden I had it. It's like that kind of like creepy experience you get when you walk into a bric-a-brac shop or an antique shop or an antique market, and you're surrounded by all this old stuff that was once owned by somebody else. Now, if it's new and it suddenly becomes yours, then hey, that's quite a nice feeling. But when it's belonged to somebody else and then you then buy it, it feels emotionally like you're buying a bit of somebody else's history, their life, their issues, their problems, their burdens, their arguments, their disagreements, their inner struggle and strife. And when it's something which is connected to someone's previous state of development when it comes to religious matters or theological matters, or indeed in this particular case witchcraft, it's an even more weird experience. And it just makes me feel that, these things were a representation of her adolescence. Now, she's not an adolescent person. She's a full-grown, proper adult now. And she's only recently evolved in this way. I think, and I could be wrong about this, but I think when I was first delivering leaflets for the church way back, sort of like eight years ago, it could have been her who was rather negative towards me when I gave her a leaflet inviting her to come to the church around about the midwinter festival time. And now she's throwing away her cauldron and her spell books and Ouija boards and everything. See what I mean? Because she's lost her faith. So when we're coming across someone who's being like really negative because they've come from a very different point of view, maybe it is like we're in our own state of adolescence about something, they're in their own state of adolescence about something, and then you have a character clash. And when you look at history, and when you look at like all the various nations fighting each other, as well as it being about the scarce resources and identity and all this, that and the other, it's almost like the nations are going through their various adolescences. When we look at how things have progressed through this way of thinking, that way of thinking, the Enlightenment and so on and so forth up to the present day, it's like there's little waves of different forms of ideological adolescence, all of which are attacking each other. And it's like at the frontiers of the both of these waves that you get this like sense of intensity. This political intensity, ideological intensity, sense of difference or distance or separation. And I think that just, to me, says something about the experience of life as being a human being. Because we look at this stuff all the time, we experience it all the time. A lot of it is in our own memories of our various periods of growing up. The people we came across, where they were coming from, their problems, our problems, trying to overcome them, having conflicts, trying to rise up and in doing so, unfortunately, hurting other people as we do so. Or someone else letting you down, and it turns out that you yourself will let someone else down on the way. Okay? That's why this whole phrase of every time you point the finger of accusation, there's three fingers pointing back to yourself is quite true and appropriate and applicable to all of us. Because, most of the things that we have an interest in is like a representation of part of our adolescence, of part of a adolescence of one type or another that we're going through, prior to eventually reaching a stage of either total clarity of mind or death. And maybe all the ideas about development which all the religions and all the cults of the world have had, the good ones, not the screwed up neurotic ones, of course, maybe they were all about trying to reach the ultimate level of growth, of clarity of thought. And maybe that's also what's been reflected in some interpretations of what the major arcana of the tarot is about. If you read the book by Elizabeth H, spelled Haich, I think, there's a lot of ideas associated with the Fool's Journey being about developing a certain level of clarity and understanding of the different stages of growth. And I think it's interesting that all these things kind of like tie in together. I mean, tarot is often associated with people being in a state of spiritual adolescence anyway. But there it is, as it were, on the other side, at the very end of the journey, looking back at you, telling you where you're going. Hopefully. So, it's like, it's interesting. And it is heartening having someone who I know of, okay, who has quite overtly gone through a period of moving out of one form of adolescence and into a state of greater clarity of mind.